All right, well, welcome to our last video in this series we've been doing called Can the Bible Be Trusted?, where we have been trying to determine whether or not the Bible is in fact a reliable and credible source of spiritual truth, whether or not it is a trustworthy document. And as we've said from the beginning, the way we are seeking to demonstrate this is not by using the scientific method, because you can't prove spiritual matters via the scientific method, but by rather using the legal historical method. This is where you examine the evidence and you follow honestly where the evidence leads you. And the idea is that when you examine the evidence, it can lead you to a conclusion which is beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's what we've been trying to do with the Bible. So we've been examining different pieces of evidence for the Bible. Let me just give you a quick recap of some of the evidence we've been looking at for the Bible. One was the uniqueness of the Bible. It's not like any other religious book that was written by one guy in one time and place. The Bible is written by over 40 authors over 1,500 years in 3 languages from 3 different continents, and yet it has amazing clarity and unity. We talked about the historical reliability of the Bible, that it is completely an accurate record of historical events and people and movements, and you can trust it absolutely. We talked about the manuscript evidence of the Bible, how the Bible has not, in fact, been corrupted over time, but all of the manuscript evidence demonstrates that the book we hold in our hands today is a very accurate representation of what was written thousands of years ago. And finally, we talked about the fulfilled prophecies of the Bible, where the Bible claims all of these prophetic predictions as a means of demonstrating its inspiration by God. The Bible is 100% accurate. It never fails. Every prophecy about very specific future events comes through with 100% accuracy. And so I believe when you really start to honestly evaluate all of this evidence, it will absolutely lead you to a conclusion which is beyond any shadow of reasonable doubt, which is that the Bible is a very trustworthy book. It absolutely can be trusted as a source of spiritual understanding. In fact, I would say it's the only book that can be trusted as a source of spiritual understanding, because no other book can live up to these same tests. No other religious book out there has the same credibility that the Bible has. Now, if you still have more questions about that, you want to dig into this topic more deeply, here's a couple books I just want to recommend to you. One is called How We Got the Bible. You can buy that on Amazon.com. It's by Neil R. Lightfoot. It's an excellent book. Another great book is simply called The Origin of the Bible, that's written by several excellent scholars. Both of these books, I'd encourage you, if you want to dig into this topic, they're not that expensive. You can get them on Amazon, and they will dig into this topic more deeply. And so I just want to conclude by reminding you when we began how this started, that what the Bible claims about itself in 2 Timothy chapter 3, 15 through 17, the Bible claims to be inspired by God. It claims to be the source of spiritual truth that will not only lead you to understanding salvation, but it will also lead you to live a life that honors God. And so what that tells us is this is what you have to wrestle with. If the Bible is true, it leads us to God. If it is false, it leads us astray. It leads us away from God. It can't do both. And so if the Bible is true, as I believe that's the conclusion that the evidence points us to, then what you do with its claims, let me remind you, what you do with its claims will determine where you spend eternity. If it is true, you can't ignore it and expect to be okay. If it's true, then you have to deal with what it says. And so I'd encourage you to really wrestle with and think about that. And so some concluding questions for you. Ask yourself, have you ever honestly evaluated the evidence for the Bible? And now if you've watched all these videos, you've done that, does it lead you to that same reasonable conclusion that the Bible is a trustworthy source of spiritual understanding? And if that's the case, what are you going to do about it? And secondly, if you believe in other sources of spiritual truth, have you ever honestly evaluated the evidence for it? And again, I believe when you honestly evaluate the evidence for the Bible, it stands alone as the authoritative evidence that God gives us to lead us not only to salvation, but to honor Him with our lives.